Welcome to the Pages of Light podcast, your destination for discussions of popular fantasy and science fiction novels from a Christian worldview. My name is Tyler, aka Verum, and with me today, as always, is Gabriel, aka the Quarantine Quartermaster. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hello, Tyler, aka Verum.
Cool. Thanks for tuning into another episode. Make sure you guys follow us on social media. All the links to those things will be in the description. You can also check out our website, pagesoflight.com, to see our blog. I also have a link to put your email in to get on our email list if we ever start to use email marketing. So you can do all of those things if you would like to. In this episode, we are going to be talking about the last two Elantris related stories that Brandon Sanderson has written. The first one is going to be a short story called The Hope of Elantris, which is set basically during the same time as the book Elantris, which was in the last two episodes. So if you haven't watched or listened to those, go check them out. So that's just a little short story. It's only like 25 pages or something? 30 pages?
Oh my gosh, it was
really
so short. Yeah, the Audible book was 30 minutes.
Yeah, 30 minutes.
Which, Warbreaker was 28 hours. So, very short.
So, really short. So, nothing drastically amazing happens in that story. But we'll just talk about it a little bit. And then the second thing we're going to talk about, which is more of the meat of the episode, is going to be The Emperor's Soul, which is a novella. That's also set in the same, it's on the same planet that Elantris takes place, but it's in a different part of the world. I think it's to the north of Teod, which you would remember from Elantris. If you remember on the map of Elantris, if you have the physical book, there's like Teod is at the north, and then there's nothing after that. But whenever we read The Emperor's Soul, we realize that this is taking place somewhere in the north of on that map, so we kind of get some insight into what's going on to the north of everything that was happening at Elantris. So that's going to be the game plan for this episode. And yeah, Gabe, do you have any other thoughts before we just jump into this discussion?
I'm just excited about The Hope of Elantris was a small, good read, but The Emperor's Soul is really where the meat of this podcast is going to be. I'm very excited to talk about that one. So, yeah, I think I'm ready for it.
Awesome. All right, so we're just going to jump in. So we'll just start off with The Hope of Elantris, which is the smaller of the two. The one thing that I loved at the very beginning is we just get the reveal that Serene is pregnant, which is pretty cool. I guess it just makes you like more hopeful for like the end of Elantris. The ending was really hopeful, but you just kind of get like the next steps in their story and the next things that is happening for Rhea.
Yeah, you're getting a glimpse into what's to come.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't know. I'm happy for them. I think they're, as we said before, they are a serious power couple, and so yeah, it'll be good. But the main story of the Hope of Elantris follows a character named Matasy. I think that's how you pronounce her name. Matasy.
I did not record that one. I recorded people from The Emperor's Soul. So for the listeners, I am trying to record myself saying the name so that I can say it right in the podcast. And I did it for The Emperor's Soul, but not for Hope of Elantris. Next time. It's going to be good.
That's okay. So it's basically just following her story as there's some things happening during Elantris where that's happening back in Elantris whenever the action is happening in Teod. So that's basically whenever we take that detour all the way up to Teod, whenever Serene gets captured by the Decor monks and Delof. So whenever we're going up there towards the end of the story, this is what's happening back in New Elantris whenever the Decor monks are attacking Elantris and they're trying to basically like purge everybody that lives in Elantris. So this is kind of a little story that's happening during that time.
Yeah, so at the beginning, this is like when Raoden he's talking to Ash actually, which is the Sion of Sereni, and he said, Ash, where were you during that time frame? And it's kind of his like Ash's remembrance of that time. And that's when we get the glimpse into Sereni getting is pregnant, and so this is kind of like traveling back to the Elantris timeline and further filling in the story from another perspective. What would you say the summary of The Hope of Elantris is? What's the main storyline?
Yeah, so basically the story follows this girl named Madison, who's like, I think she's like a teenager, like a young teenager, and she's tasked with protecting the children during this like invasion of Elantris, and she has to help all of the kids escape from like the bad guys, and she's trying to get them to the library, which she thinks will be a safe place. And yeah, so it's basically just the story of like what happens before the attack, then finding out about what's happening. Dash, which is like her quote father figure, because her real dad died. So like he leaves and takes all of the soldiers to go confront the attack, and then she stays and she tries to get all the children to the library. And that's basically the story. And then we'll get to the ending, I assume, a little bit later. Oh yeah, but there will be spoilers for this, by the way. So
I'm always assuming that we have no holds barred.
yeah, no holds barred on this podcast. So
yeah, because I think about everyone. I'm like, they won't read every single book that we read.
That's true.
So
Probably
they just gotta expect that we're gonna drop some knowledge.
That's right.
But yeah, so I think it's interesting how, we're talking about God in the podcast, and I think how it's interesting that Dash is the dad figure, and he is fighting to defend, which is what a dad is called to do, is be like the defender of the family. And then you have this kid. I don't know how to say it. Is it Matthias? I'm not sure. So, but her role is to get everyone to the library. And so, they could have switched roles. She could have been the defender and he could have taken the kids to the library. But, we're all called to do different things. And it's all about where we are in life, because she's a little kid. She's not going to be able to fight full-grown men. And he's a full-grown man. And so it's like a combination of, what situations are we like put in as people, and like what are the relationships around that situation, and what is God calling us to do in those situations. That was kind of my thought, trying to tie in our faith here to the storyline. Did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, the one thing I wrote down in the story, she says that she protects the children because the Lord's Spirit gave her the task. And I just thought that was an interesting quote, because it's almost like if you just replace like Lord Spirit with God, not that Raoden is God, but in this particular instance, like he is seen as like a God figure, or like a king type figure, and he's giving people tasks in this civilization called New Elantris. And that's like her whole world. Like her whole world is, I protect the children, and I'm going to do everything I can to like do my best in that specific task that I was given. And I feel like a lot of times for Christians, we like to try to figure out our own tasks and like give ourselves things to do, instead of just looking at maybe the gifts that God has given us and trying to make the most of those. Sometimes we can kind of like think, well, like, I don't like my gift, or stuff like that, where you're not you're trying to be somebody you're not, in a sense. But I like that she is like, she's fully bought into her task, and she's going to do it with her whole heart and soul. And I just kind of like that about her character.
Yeah, I definitely identify with that. It is so nice to be, if you feel like you've been called by God to do something, it's so nice to be in that space where you're like, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
Yep.
And I have recently found myself in that situation. Just a quick anecdote. I was in Home Goods, and I invited a couple that I met there to a marriage class at our church. And then they were talking to me after the class, and I was feeling like God was asking me to, you know, pour into them. And like, so I said, would it be ridiculous if I offered to cover the cost of the class for you guys? And she just looked at me, and she had like tears in her eyes, and she just said, we were praying for to God about our marriage, and like we were looking for help, and you've like answered that prayer for us, because it was just this chance meeting. And it's really beautiful when God's plan starts coming together. And I feel like I've found my way on the path. Like, I'm not on the path, but like I trod across the path, and then in those moments, like, good things happen. So the whole idea is to be on the path going towards God, and I kind of meander on the path, off the path, on the path, off the path. So that's a little bit about my journey.
Well, that's basically everybody's journey, going on and off the path. Nobody ever stays
unless they're going in the wrong direction and don't even know who God is.
That's true. Then you're just always off the path.
Yeah, you're like looking for money, or like you act out of brokenness, like you were treated the wrong way. And it's hard to break those habits of the family of origin. If you come from a broken place, it's hard to see the light and start walking towards it. And I love at the end of the podcast, Tyler, how you tell everyone to share the gospel with someone. I'm like, oh, that's such a good reminder that we need to be doing that all the time.
Yep. Yeah, thanks. I think another thing about this story and just Madisy as a character, I know that's probably the wrong pronunciation, but that's okay.
We'll get it.
I really enjoyed that she believes so much in her task that she's willing to sacrifice herself to save the children. So like at one point in the story, she realizes that like she's going to have to be a diversion for them so that all the children can get away. And so she sends Ash along with the children to take them to the library. And she makes this distraction to try and get all of these decorum monks to follow her. And because I think she saw that Dash had fallen or had gotten killed or something like that, and she realizes like she's the last line of defense essentially, and
stepped up to the plate.
Yeah, she stepped up to the plate, and she's like, I need to be prepared to give my life for the people that I'm
to have that kind of conviction.
Yeah, the people that I've been given charge over. So like, and that's like, as Christians, we're supposed to like feel that exact same way about our faith. Like, we're supposed to be willing to potentially die for our faith should we be confronted in a situation like that. And I think
step up into situations where God calls us to step up and step into them.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a life or death situation, but there's so many times where like maybe you see an opportunity that you could take advantage of for the gospel, and maybe you're like, but I don't want to do it because I'll feel uncomfortable, or people will think I'm weird, or fill in whatever box you want to fill in with just not maybe doing something that God's calling you to do just because you don't feel like it's not going to help you personally. It's only going to help God. And we're just being selfish in how we live our life.
Oh yeah, I'm selfish like 99% of the time. I'm working on trying to be selfless. The way
As
God
are we all. We're all selfish. But I think there was just a lot of little tidbits and little nuggets in this story, just to kind of like that parallel of the Christian life. So yeah, I think it was a pretty good story. Of course, at the very end we have like after Raiden like figures out how to fix the magic system, then all of the magic comes back and Dash is healed and he's able to come back and save his quote daughter, and save everybody. So that's kind of how it ends. But the story is really just about Madisy and her her struggle and her living out her convictions. So yeah.
Yeah, it was a good read. It was a short one, but it was good.
Yeah. All right, so that's gonna conclude our discussion on the Hope of Elantris. If you have thoughts about the Hope of Elantris, please leave a comment or on the YouTube, or I don't think there's an email you can send anything to, but yeah, leave a comment on the YouTube or a review on the podcast. On Apple Podcasts, you can leave a review.
Yeah, help us out with some reviews.
Yes, I think we do have one review, maybe two. I haven't looked in a while, but
good. I've been talking to my friends, people going to New York. Been like, yeah, you should listen to the podcast.
Thanks for sharing it far and wide.
I'm always gonna share. I'm always gonna try and share.
All right, let's jump into The Emperor's Soul. This is a novella. It's about 110-ish pages, 120 pages, something like that.
Oh, and it's good, though. It's real good.
It is pretty good. Very unique, as all of Brandon's works and magic systems are. They're always very different and unique and interesting. And I love learning about different magic systems and things that he dreams up in his head. It's always a joy for me to discover something new. So the basic plot of The Emperor's Soul is that we're following a character named Shay, and she's like what they call a forger, which means she can, it's basically what you would think it is. She can copy things, works of art, objects, stuff like that, and she steals the originals, I think, and then she leaves a copy of them in their place, and she is caught as she's trying to forge something in this palace, and she's in prison, and the people who are in charge, they come to her and they ask her if she can not just normally she forges objects, but they want her to forge the soul of their emperor, who has become incapacitated, or he's like brain dead or something like that. He can't get up, and he's just bedridden. So they want her to copy his soul and give him a new soul so that he can be healed. But they also need it to be so that people won't recognize that it's a different person. So it has to be an exact enough copy that people won't think that anything nefarious had happened. So just that premise alone, that's a pretty insane premise. Just copying somebody's soul to be exactly like it was before. So I don't know. What did you think of just the story in general, Gabe, and the premise?
Oh, man. Okay, yeah. Let's get into Emperor's Soul. This is going to be a good conversation. Okay. So, yeah, Shay is our main character, and the forgery is also like a magic system. Like, when Tyler was describing it, it sounds like she's making a forgery of paintings, but also she has the ability to forge not just objects, but like down to this person's soul. And to recreate the Emperor's soul, she basically has to know him inside out. Like she has 100 days to do it. So there's a period of mourning. So the king is not going to emerge from his like quote unquote bed chambers for 100 days. So the leading class, led by Ashravan and Frava, they're like in a circle of people. They're called arbiters, and the arbiters band together and say, we can't leave this nation without the emperor, and we need to bring him back so that he can continue to rule and we can continue to have influence. And so they loathe Shay. They don't like what she does. They think it's an abomination. Yet they tell her she's the best of the best. And so she has to use her forgery skills to make this Emperor's soul again. And basically she does a lot of research. She does a lot of research and writing. She has to read like every single biography, and she has to program in all of these like minutia like details, like he has a little bit of mercy, and in these situations he's going to be defensive. And it's basically writing neuron by neuron like the king's brain, because our personality and who we are, it all lives in our brain and the neural pathways that we've carved in our brain and the way that we think about things. I like to quote Stephen Covey. We think about things in deep and sustained ways, and that's how we become who we are, as we think about things in deep and sustained ways. And so she's basically working with a blank slate, and then she has to recreate all of his life experiences to just get those different shades of his personality just right, making it exactly right so no one can tell the difference.
Yep.
That blows my mind.
Yeah, it's just a crazy premise. And she gets a lot of the information from his personal journals too, not just like stuff that other people had written, but it's a lot of his own personal writing, so that you can really get to see like what he thought of behind the scenes. Maybe what he thought about something is different than what he talked about publicly.
On record saying, versus his personal thoughts.
Yeah. And then she can also see like how he's changed as a person. So journals that he wrote earlier in his life have a different tone that compared to the ones that he has later in life. So she can see like how he started out as a person and how he's kind of changed over time the longer he was the emperor. Because obviously if you're in a position of power like that, you can go into it being one type of person, but it's in some ways you're going to be changed by the power, and like all the stuff that you have to do and make decisions about. So, and of course, every day and every week and every year we're changing as human beings, and no one is the same person that they were a year ago, 10 years ago, whatever it is. So, so that's where she gets
people, and people can change, which is like, when I look at, I know justifiably that some politicians deserve to have their background like ripped out and like say this person did some bad things, but also like there's some things you just do in like your teenage years and like your early 20s, and your brain doesn't even fully develop till you're like 21, and I'm convinced mine didn't even fully develop till I was like 28. I just feel like I wasn't working with a full deck until then. But like, and people can make a decision to change. And I think that it's so wrong to persecute people, and especially like us being Christians, like, ye without sin cast the first stone. I mean, we've all messed up, and, people who stand up to this high level of scrutiny and they dig up something that happened 10 years ago. I'm just like, I get it. It makes news and everything, but like, come on, where's the heart in that? You're just doing it to attack the person.
Yeah. There's like there's no grace in our society anymore. It's like whatever you did in your past is on the table to be talked about now, no matter
dissected.
No matter what you said in the past, no matter how many times you apologized or said, I realized that was dumb and I changed the way I thought about this or whatever it is. Yeah, I hate that about society. Like just the idea where there's no room for growth and change. It's just like every person is always the same whenever they were young compared to whenever they are now. And that's just not how the world works.
No, it's like, let's judge someone by their worst, like the thing that is the worst thing about them. And it's not even something that like, we don't have the grace to say, they had a moment. Like sometimes people have bad days and they don't act the way that they do day to day. And then we take these situational things and then we just make them really big. I think what Tyler and I are saying is we need to have a little bit more grace with people. And there are some people that are just crazy and don't change and they're just lying through their teeth. But
true,
there are the other people who are actually changing and becoming better people. Let's have a little grace, people.
And that concludes our side quest for the podcast.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Maybe we'll go on another side quest. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the blood sealing and how it's similar to forgery, but it's a little bit different because you have to use people's blood to make the stamps, whereas in forgery you're making stamps out of actual ink, and it's kind of like a mirror to forgery, but it's like a darker version of forgery, and it's similar to, because this also takes place in the same world as Elantris does, and so the magic system is similar in that it has like a dark side to it, and there's also a light side. So in Elantris we had the Aeon Door, which is the Elantrian magic based on the lights and like the drawing of the Aeons. And then also in Elantris we had the Decor monks who are doing like the blood magic sacrificing stuff, and that's how the Decor are able to get their power through basically blood sacrifices of other people. So yeah, and in the Emperor's Soul, the blood sealing is used to like put this stamp on the door of Shay's little prison cell that she's being kept in for the 100 days. And so every morning this blood sealer has to come and like renew the stamp essentially. And if she were to like open the door and escape, then the blood seal would be able to like track her, and the blood sealer can send out like these skeletal minion kind of things after her, and she does get to fight those at the end, which is it's a cool scene for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. Did you have any thoughts on just the blood sealing, or we could talk about the fight scene at the end if you want to as well?
Oh yeah, well, yeah, that was a pretty cool fight scene. Yeah, she's fighting the five. She's in her like warrior mode, and she's just like, all that matters is the challenge, and she like fights them off and like kills them, and then she like takes their heads and like wraps them up in her cloak and says, I'm taking these so you can't send them after me. And then she stabs the guy in the leg and tells him to go go talk to his girlfriend in the swamps or something.
Oh yeah, because he's like reluctantly in the palace where he really wants to be back home with her or whatever.
And Shay like had the understanding of him, and like because she's so good at reading people, she's the only person who can produce the Emperor's soul out of Soulstone, because she is so good at understanding people and why they make the decisions that they make and the nuances of their personality. She's the only one with that like deep view into people that could create. She's the master, and even at the end of the book they talk about how like her true pride is that the forgery is going to stand. The Emperor's soul, like he's going to continue to rule, and it's not in front of like hundreds of people looking at the painting, but thousands of people in the kingdom are going to be affected by her works.
Yep.
And then, sorry, another little side quest. I think it's really cool how she took like his boyhood self and like his aspirations to be like a strong leader. And like that was a really cool like at the end where like instead of thinking about his next banquet, he thinks about what his people need. And I'll use the term, I think Tony Robbins, like it's a 2 millimeter shift, like from I don't know I don't think this actually qualifies as that, so never mind. But like changing like your priorities to like, instead of looking at like what's the next payoff for me, like what is the responsibility I have to my kingdom that I'm running. We all have our little kingdom. Our pastor likes to say that he has his little kingdom, and it's like he has his study
his
and he
garage.
has like a box, and his box. He's got like a box where he like organizes stuff. He's talked about the box, but anyway, yeah, he's like, I get to have my kingdom my way. I get to organize it. And so, yeah, it's in that shift from like the selfish to the selfless is what she kind of programmed into him so that he could become the emperor he was supposed to be. And she also denies Frava from getting the back door into, to darkly manipulate him, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that she, at the beginning, she doesn't necessarily like want to do a good job. She's just kind of like, she's basically just doing everything that she can to like buy herself time so that she can escape.
Shay.
Yeah. but then towards the end, she becomes so invested in what she's doing because what she's doing has never been done before. So she can be like the first person to really do a soul forgery justice and to do it correctly. And she actually just decides to do it to the best of her ability instead of trying to like sabotage it in some way or do like the backdoor thing like Frava wanted her to do. She really just does it for like the whole art of it. And that's kind of a lot of the story is about, you know, the arbiters see that what she does is like a blasphemy almost, and it's not like true art. And Gautona is always saying like, oh, you have so much potential and you're just wasting it on this stupid forgery thing when you could actually be a real true artist. But like she actually does see what she does as true art, and then at the end Gautana does actually he recognizes that, and he's like, wow, what she does is masterpiece. It's a masterpiece, and it is actually a work of art, because to do what she does is like, it's like a next level art.
Yeah,
because it doesn't
it's off the charts, like creativity and, you know, just persistence and insightfulness. It's like this whole blend of skills that not a lot of people have.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, back to the blood sealing, and I think I just really liked that fight scene at the end that you mentioned, and we actually just finished, my wife and I just finished watching Lock and Key, the first season, and in a scene in that show, one of the characters, there's this key that you can plug into your head and it lets you access your mind. And so in one of the scenes, the head key, this girl, she goes into her head and she finds her fear, essentially, and she like takes out her fear. She pulls it out of her mind and she like kills it, and then she buries it in the forest or something. So now she's basically a person. Yeah, she's basically a person who has no fear. And that really reminded me of this scene where she takes one of her 5 essences and she transforms her past essentially into something that's completely different and new, and it gives her like a new background and new sets of skills, and that she like basically doesn't have any fear. Like she's all about like the warrior person. She's all about the challenge and the battle and all of that kind of stuff. So, and she's not like, she can ignore the pain in a way, and it just really reminded me of that, because she like transforms herself into a completely different person so that she can face this new challenge that she has to overcome in order so that she can escape from the palace. So yeah, I just thought it was a really cool scene.
Yeah, when you said that, I was reading a book and it talked about like there is a clinical condition where like the amygdala, where fear lives in the brain, like is deactivated for a person and they cannot feel fear. I cannot remember the results of that study at the moment, but yeah, but fear is what defines some people personalities. The fear of not being accepted, the fear of not living up to expectations. Fear is something that really motivates people, because they're taught that if they're not doing something that they could be called out on it, and they get very fearful about that. So, I mean, removing your fear has the potential to completely change you. And then we also like want to try and lean on God. Wants us to have, he wants us to have a head on our shoulders and feel fearful, but he wants us to rely on him for things so we don't have to feel fear. We can rely on him to provide for us if we just, look for him and seek him. Some people just, pray it up and expect it to happen, but there also has to be a part of yourself looking and striving to be with God. Sometimes he just gives it to you out of grace, but there also should be a part of you that's saying, I want to find him, I want to seek him, so that he can provide for me.
Yeah, for sure. So we talked about the first essence that she uses, which I think is the Shazan. That's the first one
Yeah,
that she uses.
Shazon, I think.
You want to give us the rundown of her 5 essences?
Sure, yeah.
Essence marks?
Shay's 5 essence marks. So I'll just tell you about the Shazon is translated to Shaya the Fist is an extremely skilled warrior who spent the last 15 years among the Tului people who adopted and trained her in martial arts. They also gave her the name Shazon. Gaining access to the Tului training was very difficult. Shazon was nearly killed a dozen times while training. She has a lean, hard body, short hair, and scars that stretch from her nose down around her right cheek. Unlike Shay, she doesn't need spectacles. She doesn't know how to create soul stamps and doesn't have scholarly inclinations. So it's interesting when she applies. So they say in the book she like applies this stamp to summon the Shazon like mindset, and she like takes the stamp out after Galtana gives them to her out of mercy. He's like, I don't necessarily agree with you as a person because you've decided to do forgery, but I also don't want to see you killed. So there is a connection there between those two. And he is also just very impressed that she was actually able to pull off the soul stamp for the Emperor. But she like takes the stamp and she applies it to her bicep. And this is the part I was like excited to talk about. There's so in another book I've read, there's this thing called a glamour, which changes the perception of something from like a sword into like an amulet. You know, it changes size, but it's not like, it's kind of like doesn't change like the essence of it, but just the way that people are perceiving it. But in here, it's not just a glamour, like it's not just changing, but because it mentions that, you know, that her cheek is different, and that like they say when she does it, she has like 2 timelines in her head, like her creating the soul stamp and then like her fighting with this warrior group of people, and then like it kind of erases the soul stamp and then she becomes that person. And it's interesting because there's also physical changes, like she's been working out nonstop for 12 years and her hair changes. So it's not just like a glamour. It's not just superficial. There's actually changes in the body and in her neurological pathways. She knows martial arts now. So from my understanding, the neuroscience behind skill building is like if you're performing martial arts, you need to do a move like 60 to like 70 times to actually learn it and it to become part of your muscle memory. And there's all of this rewriting of the brain, and that she has done all this practice, that she has 12 years of experience. And that's like, she gets to draw on that. And that's when she like fights the blood sealers, like skull animals. And that's when and then like Zoo is after her. So Zoo is her like guard in the building. And then like, he like runs around the corner. He's like, like you need to get back in your cell. And she like, he doesn't even finish his sentence. She chops his windpipe, like breaks 6 ribs, and he's like crumpled on the floor. And they're like, Shazon is like a river. So that's like her in her warrior mode. She didn't even break stride. She grabbed the dagger, cut off his cloak, and like flung it around herself without breaking stride. I was like, ooh, Brandon Sanderson, that was good. That was real good.
Yeah.
Did you have any thoughts about the Shazon?
No, I think it's really interesting how it's not just like mental changes, it's physical body changes as well. I thought that was really interesting because she doesn't even need to wear glasses anymore, which is like, you can just put something on your bicep and like, it just fixes your eyesight. I don't know. It's just like, it just seems really cool that, like, could she make a stamp that would just fix your eyesight? Like, that's all it did. It's like it could be used in like a healing aspect. I think
but it's all temporary, right? Because the stamps like wear off, and you kind of have to reuse it.
Yeah, true. But I guess that could.
But I mean, it could. I mean, I would. It's just like putting your contacts on in the morning, right? Like.
Yeah, or it's like you have to take a pill every week for your allergies or something like that. like something that you would just do like every week or something, just to make sure that you could keep your eyesight good or something like that. I just think that's an interesting other application you could potentially use it for. And it also speaks to like Gautana's like disappointment in a sense of like her using her gifts for forgery, where she could be using it for things that are more noble, I guess, instead of doing like stealing and doing nefarious things. Like he kind of thinks that she should be a little bit more altruistic about things and do things that are less selfish, I guess, in a way. So yeah, that was my only thought about the Shazan.
It's that was a really cool one. And then we'll move on. So there's 4 others. We'll kind of make these go a little quicker. So the scholar, using the Essence mark, she can speak a dozen languages from Fen to Muladil and a few others. She knows dozens of cultures and how to move in them. She knows science, mathematics, many major political factions of the world. Well, that's helpful. I'm just going to turn into a scholar for 24 hours and know a bunch of stuff I didn't know a few hours ago. Yeah, these essence marks are really cool magic. Like, you basically... So part of your life is you have to choose, what path am I going to go? What skills am I going to embrace? What is like my defining feature? And you don't have to choose anymore. Well, actually, in Shay's world, you have to choose to be a soul, to create soul stamps with forgery and just pursue that. But then once you've done that, you can have any background that you want as you forge your own soul. So that's an interesting thought experiment. Like, what if I had unlimited potential? Because essentially you have unlimited time. I mean, it took her 8 years to create these 5. We're only talking about the second one right now, these 5 essence marks. But yeah, what did you think about the scholar?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these are just like, they were designed for like specific purposes, for like whenever she needs to infiltrate certain areas to get into places. So like if she needs to make it seem like she's very knowledgeable and scholarly to get into these like prestigious palaces or like places where they keep
right
all
social
the
groups to gain access to certain people.
Yeah, for sure. So like that would be good for like the scholar, and then the beggar is really good for like blending, like not standing out to anything. Like you do this big heist or whatever, and then you change into the beggar where you're just like,
the beggar's the third one.
Yeah. So I don't know, they're just really good for like, it's like the ultimate infiltrator loadout, I guess. Like you can just, I wonder how long can you like swap them all the time? Like I think it was implied that like once you use it, it's gone. Because like she would have to remake it again. I think that was what kind of how I understood it. Maybe I'm wrong, but
well, I think she like, because I mean the Emperor's Soul, it has to be stamped every day. So I think that once she crafts it, like it's kind of set. And then because there's also a thing like on the day, like there's 28 days or 24 days. She said like, I've created all my different paints. Now I have to make the actual stamp and like combine it. But yeah, I guess she just worked on these for, they said she worked on these for 8 years, and just committed herself to being able to have these things. So yeah, you brought up number 3, the beggar. So I'll talk about the number 4, which is the survivalist. The essence marks gives her keen skills as a woodsman, hunter, as many other useful surviving in the wilderness. I thought there was one. Let's see. The Way Out is the last one. But what's the one that like gave her contortionist skills? Do you remember them talking about like her being able to escape from her cell, if she had like that one stamp. I don't see that in my notes here, but they definitely mentioned that. I was like, oh, that's another crazy thing. Like she could like climb up walls or, you know, escape out of really small spaces like was mentioned.
Maybe that was the Shazan one.
Yeah, maybe that one is it. Um, and yeah, so the survivalist, I mean, that's her just like if she's if she's not in a city situation where she needs the beggar skill, she becomes the survivalist. Like she's traveling between countries and she's out in the middle of nowhere. She's just like, oh, I'm going to survive. No problem. Don't need anyone else's help because I've got all the experience myself.
Yeah, I feel like all of these are in a way survivalist ones. They just allow her to survive in different scenarios. So like the survivalist is like the outdoor hunter, trapper, surviving in the wilderness kind of thing. The beggar is like surviving in like the slums and trying to escape from like a palace or something like that where she needs to go off the radar. The scholar is how she gets into these places. Like she can use all of these different ways to get out of specific situations or to get herself into specific situations. So yeah, they were clearly very deliberately thought out, which is why it probably took her so long to craft all of them, because they were all made with a specific purpose in mind, so that they all complemented each other in some really good way. So yeah, no wonder it took so long for her to make them.
Yeah. And then the final of the 5 essence marks that she created is called The Way Out. She knows cooking and farm work and sewing. She visited a resealer and was given a remedy, which is actually a soul stamp for this essence mark for an illness. She believes that she will die unless she applies the soul stamp every morning. And then it goes into how she's covering up her tracks so that she can't. So basically, she's built in a way for her to give herself the soul stamp every day so that she never breaks out of this this routine of being basically like I'll just use the word commoner in this time maybe, where she's just on the farm and doing work and cooking and sewing and all this stuff. And so what did you think about her programming a way out of her life as a soul stamper? What did you think about that?
Yeah, that one also had like it wipes all of her memory of how to do soul stamping and all of that kind of stuff. It's like she would just forget all about like her history and how she learned how to do all this stuff. So yeah, I think it's interesting just because it seems like she believes so much in what she does as a forger, but she's still leaving herself away. Like if it ever becomes too much, she can just like get out immediately and she can just go and live like a simple life. And I think it was mentioned in there that she does sometimes think about a life that's just very simple and common and ordinary, and not one filled with so much stress and like high intensity situations. Just a life that's not that's really just way more muted than she's used to. So I think on some level she longs for that. And I think all of these essences are just like a little piece of her that's like amplified to take up a bigger part of her life. So like in some aspects she is a warrior, and that's what the Shazan is like. And so the Shazan then she's like all warrior. And same with this, like the scholar, she's already like pretty scholarly, but this one like amplifies that. So I think a lot of these already just amplify things that are already true about her, but they make her better and more proficient. And in those specific things where maybe she's only a novice in some of those things, but those essence marks make her like professionals in those.
I think they mentioned like the lock picking skills, like when she's like good in her normal mode, but when she becomes a beggar, she's just like, I got this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I think it's just really interesting. It's just a really cool premise that you can basically like swap out your personal characteristics on the fly essentially. And I don't know. It's cool.
I wonder if she could use it like, even, she said that, the way out is a way for her to like, I wonder if she could like use it for like 5 years to go deep underground and then have like something programmed to like come get her out of the soul, like someone comes and steals the soul stamp and then she like returns to herself. But that'd be an interesting way to like go underground. You don't even know who you are. You just go like find a society and be like, yep, I'm gonna plant myself here we go.
Yep. Well, I think at the end, didn't it say something about how she changed the way out soul stone or soul stamp thing to be a little bit different than what it was? I think she said that she changed it so that she had some kind of important father figure so that she could remember in some way the role that Galtona had played in her time at the palace. Something like that, where she was able to just kind of keep a little piece of herself that she maybe previously would have forgotten if she had used that. So
yeah, and I think that's interesting because I think in the Bible it talks about who you decide to keep around you are the people that will have the most influence on you. And her and Galtona had she said that she had to be honest with him to make her con, basically, to get out and get away successful with him. She said that was the only way to win him over. That was the only thing that she had left, was to be completely honest. And they created a relationship, even though it was adversarial at sometimes. They did have a connection because he did help her escape and he did give her back her 5 essence marks.
There's like a mutual respect between them, even though they were on somewhat opposite sides from one another. But I think
he had to basically work elbow to elbow with her, and it was interesting because, like, he had to look over her shoulder and see how much time and effort and how amazing she is as a soul forger to actually make it happen.
Yep. And I think just like her and Galtona, how you said that she had to be honest with him. She said that, I think there was a quote in there that said something like, the only way that I could manipulate you was by being genuine. Like, she couldn't actually manipulate him by lying. She had to manipulate him by just being herself. And I thought that was a really cool parallel for just like us as Christians, and how like we're not trying to manipulate people, but we want to be like ambassadors for Christ and for the gospel. And the best way to do that is to just be genuine with people and just show the love of God to them, and not try to like think of these ways to like, oh, if I could just get them to see it this way, then I'll convert them, or like something like that, or just get them to see my point of view or whatever. You just have to like be a friend to people. You have to just like be there whenever they need you. You have to just be a genuine person and build a relationship with people, and then you can influence them in certain ways because you've built up that rapport and that friendship with that person, instead of trying to just meet them and like share the gospel immediately. It's more about building relationships with people and less about just like beating people over the head with the Bible or something like that, or like the fire and brimstone preacher people. It's like, that's not going to convert people. You have to get to know them, know their story, know where they came from in order to understand, and then speak into their life with truth. So
I love that you just said all that. I mean, I completely agree that the way we're going to win influence with people is not to it's not to sit there and explain to them, this is why you should follow Christ. It's to walk the walk, and just not. I think of Sir Gawain in The Green Knight that Tyler and I saw together with our wives, and how he's about to do a kindness for someone, and he turns around and he says, well, what's in it for me? That kind of expectation that if you do something nice for someone, like you're looking for something in return. And like Christians are called to just do things because it is the right thing. And they also say to do them silently, like, God says to, give to him when no one's looking. And, there's like the humble brags on Facebook, like, oh, I just, got done at my homeless drive. There were 250 participants and I was able to organize, blah, blah. Yeah. Like, if you're doing it to make the Facebook post, your heart, I mean, maybe you're promoting it. Maybe it's your business. Maybe it is a good thing. But if the person's heart is, I want people to see how good of a person I am, like, it is better just to go to the homeless shelter and serve, 1 weekend a month or whatever you can do, and just not tell anyone. And then if it comes up, say, hey, I do this once a month. Why don't you come with me? And then, you're inviting people into your walk with Christ, because you're feeling called to do it. Yeah, so I'm on board with what you're saying. It's like the way that we're going to win people over is not by beating them over our head with our own understanding of Christianity. It's to stand beside people, walk beside people, to give them the love and the support that they need, because that's what God wants us to do.
Yeah. Yeah, very well said. I think another kind of Christian worldview themed thing that I saw was at one point in the story where they're talking about how the Emperor Ashravan, he grew a bit complacent in his being emperor, and he became very indulgent in being emperor, and which is different than how he started out being emperor. He started out being like, he wants to be a good king. He wants to be a person who's for the people and thinking about their needs above the needs of himself, or like the people who are well off, or the other people that are in power. And slowly over time, that just became something that he wasn't really into anymore. And I thought that was an interesting parallel for the Christian life, because I think sometimes we can just become complacent in our own walk with God. Like, the longer you're a Christian, sometimes the longer you just feel like, I already know all the stuff about Christianity there is to know. Like, I don't need to read my Bible anymore. I don't need to pray anymore. Or just whatever it is. Like, I don't need to do it anymore because I feel like I don't get anything out of it, or, whatever it is. But it's in doing that and becoming complacent that we become less like afraid of our sin, and we're more willing to like act out on sinful things, because we like don't take our faith seriously in a sense anymore. Like, it's just kind of something that we're just doing. We're doing it for the motions, not because we actually believe in it. And that was kind of like the thing that we said before, like, we're on and off the journey at the end of the podcast, or at the beginning of the podcast. And that, I think a lot of that is a description of a lot of like the Christian life, is just coming, you're really on the Christian life, and then like you have times where you're just like completely off the rails, and you're not doing anything Christian related. You're not reading your Bible.
You're out in the wind.
You're not praying. Yeah, you're just out in the wind. You're blowing around, and you don't have any foundation, or like the house built on the sand, or what. I forget what passage that is in Scripture, but
build your house on the rock, on God's Scripture, and His solid foundation will see you through the mean times and the hard times. And if you build on sand, you're just gonna sink, and things are gonna fall apart. Oh, you had me thinking. Oh boy. Nope. That ship has sailed. It's not coming back.
That's okay. I don't know. I think that's probably a good place to end it on. Just keep remember to keep your spiritual disciplines at the forefront, because that will keep you on the right path.
It came back. Okay. So it's on that topic. So how you're saying you're not practicing, or you're not getting into the Scripture and stuff, and you're becoming less afraid of your sin. That I really like the way you said that, because the Holy Spirit is supposed to be within you, and if you're not feeding it, and growing in my faith, I think I've been seeking God for about 7 years in my life. like I didn't even know that I was sinning a lot of the time. And the further you reach into the Bible and the further that you look for truth, you realize that there are so many little things, and it is in the little things, just like those little like changes, like, oh, I need to do it for, like we were talking about with serving the homeless people. Like, where is my heart? Like, I'm just gonna show up, I'm just gonna do it because that's what God calls me to do, versus like, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna tell people about it, and like that's the whole objective, and that's not where God's heart is. So I was just gonna say that, like, checking back in with God, and like it should be like a daily thing, because if you're not checking in with him for days, like, you're just getting further and further from him. It's supposed to be like little check-ins. It doesn't need to be this big monumental things, but just like, God, speak to me a little bit, or let me sit and meditate on your words today, or let me even just take a moment to pray about the hardship so that I can respond to it in a more spiritual way, in a better way. So I was just coming back to, it's not like, it should be like a day. It should be part of your daily flow, versus like, well, I'll get to it when I get to it, because you need that check-in with God to kind of keep you moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Very good. Well said. I think we'll leave it there on that. If you have any thoughts on just the Hope of Elantris or the Emperor's Soul, make sure you leave a comment on the YouTube video that will go up along with this podcast. And if you do want to support the podcast, please go over to the YouTube channel and subscribe. You can check out our website as well. Follow us on social media. If you ever get a chance to just share the podcast with somebody, whether that's on social media or just in person, please do it.
So we just need you to share it with one.
Just one person.
That's right. Just get them on board.
That's right. I think the next episode is going to be Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. Both of us have read this book, but it has been a long time since I've read it. So it'll be good to revisit it. And this will be our jump into some science fiction, and we'll take a little bit of a break from some Brandon Sanderson, and then we have some other things planned for the rest of the year. Hope you guys stay tuned for all of those things. And Gabe, where can people follow you if they want to see what you're up to?
neighborhoodnerdservices.com. I'm either going to do /QQ or /quarantine quartermaster. We'll see which one of those websites gets up first, and then I'll start posting there.
Cool. So links to all of those things will be in the description, of course. If you enjoyed this podcast and you really get value out of it, make sure you leave a review on Apple Podcasts, so we can reach more people, and just share how we're thinking about novels and stuff like that from a specifically Christian worldview and how it can influence our Christian life. So thanks for listening. Remember to keep reading and to share the gospel with somebody this week, and we will see you guys in the next episode. See ya.